Hey everyone, and welcome back to Spill the Beans, the podcast where we explore the fascinating, the unexpected, and sometimes the downright delightful. I'm your host, Mia.
And I'm Lucas.
Lucas, it's so good to have you back on the show. We've got a really interesting topic today, something that really makes you pause and think about how we do things, you know?
Thanks for having me, Mia. I'm looking forward to it.
So we're diving headfirst into a world where coffee isn't just a morning jolt, but a ritual. The input for today talks about Ethiopia, the birthplace of coffee, and how they approach it. It's not a grab-and-go situation at all. It's a whole ceremony.
Yeah, it's quite a contrast to how many of us experience coffee, isn't it?
Totally. The input paints this picture of green beans being roasted by hand, right there in front of you, then ground, brewed 3 times, and shared. It sounds so intentional. Have you ever had coffee made from scratch like that, Lucas?
I have, actually. It was years ago, traveling through parts of North Africa. The whole process, from seeing the raw beans to the final pour, was mesmerizing. It felt like an event.
An event. I love that. It sounds like more than just a drink. So let's just dive right in and explore this Ethiopian coffee ceremony. So the input is all about this Ethiopian coffee ceremony, right? This idea that it can take over an hour, and it's this really involved process. Lucas, when you think about that, what's the first thing that comes to mind about how it differs from, say, grabbing a latte on your way to work?
Well, it's the emphasis on connection, I think. The input mentions sharing with neighbors, family, even strangers. It's not just about the caffeine fix. It's about community and slowing down. It's a deliberate act of togetherness.
Community and slowing down. That's such a beautiful way to put it. In our world, it feels like we're always rushing, always trying to shave off seconds. This Ethiopian approach, as described in the input, seems to be the exact opposite.
Exactly. Imagine this. You're visiting someone's home and they offer you coffee. The first thing they do is bring out this small, flat roasting pan. You can literally smell the raw coffee beans hitting the heat. It's a very visceral experience.
Oh, wow. So you're not just seeing a machine brew it. You're seeing the asterisk creation of the drink. That smell must be incredible. I can almost picture it now, the aroma filling the room.
It is. And they'll agitate the pan, moving it back and forth over a small charcoal brazier or a gas burner, so the beans roast evenly. You can see them transform from a pale green to a rich, deep brown. It's a visual spectacle as much as an olfactory one.
It sounds so much more engaging, like you're part of the process. The input mentions hand roasting. Is there a specific technique or skill involved in that to get it just right?
There is. The roaster needs to have a good sense of timing and temperature. They're looking for a specific shade of brown, avoiding burning the beans, which would make the coffee bitter. They'll often wave the pan over the heat, and then lift it away to cool slightly. It's a dance, really.
A dance. I like that analogy. It sounds like it requires a lot of attention to detail. And then, after roasting, what happens?
Well, after the beans have cooled a bit, they're typically ground. Traditionally, this is done using a mortar and pestle. It's a rhythmic, almost meditative sound as the beans are crushed. You get a much more robust grind this way, not fine like espresso powder.
The sound of grinding. That's another sensory detail. I can imagine the thudding sound. And you said it's brewed 3 times? The input mentions that. Is that a standard part of the ceremony?
Yes, it is. It's called Abol, Tona, and Bereka. The first brew, Abol, is the strongest. The grounds are brewed with water in a special clay pot, a jebena. It's poured from a height, creating a bit of froth. Then the same grounds are used for the second brew, Tona, which is a bit weaker, and then a third time for Bereka, which is very mild.
Wow. So each pour uses the same grounds, just with fresh water. That's fascinating. It's like getting 3 different coffees out of one roasting session. It makes so much sense why it takes over an hour. You're not just making 1 cup. You're preparing multiple brews for everyone present.
Precisely. And it's not just about the quantity, it's the quality of the experience. The host is demonstrating hospitality, taking care of their guests. The conversation flows. Stories are shared. It's this anchor point in the day, a moment of peace and connection.
It's so different from just grabbing a to-go cup and rushing off. The input really highlights this birthplace of coffee, not rushing it. It's like they're respecting the origin of coffee by treating it with this reverence. You know, I've heard of people who are really particular about their coffee beans, but this is like a whole new level of appreciation.
It is. And it's deeply ingrained in their culture. It's not just for special occasions. It's a daily ritual for many. It's a way of life. The process itself, from roasting to brewing to serving, is a form of art and social interaction.
Art and social interaction. I love that. So when you think about this whole Ethiopian coffee ceremony described in the input and contrast it with our typical hurried coffee culture, what's the biggest lesson we might be missing out on?
I think it's the value of deliberate slowness and shared presence. We often see coffee as a functional beverage, something to fuel us. They see it as a reason to connect, to pause, to simply be with each other. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
The journey, not just the destination. That's a great way to summarize this topic. So after all this discussion about the beautiful Ethiopian coffee ceremony, essentially the core idea is that it's a profound act of community and mindfulness, deeply rooted in tradition. Let's bookmark that and continue after a break. All right, welcome back to Spill the Beans. We were just marveling at the Ethiopian coffee ceremony and how it's a masterclass in slowing down and connecting. Lucas, before the break, we were talking about the cultural significance. Now, let's shift gears slightly and think about the actual mechanics of why this ceremony is so valued, keeping the input in mind. The input emphasizes the 3-time brewing. What's the impact of brewing the same grounds multiple times on the final taste profile?
Well, it's about extracting different flavor profiles and intensities. The first brew, Abol, as I mentioned, is the strongest. It pulls out the most vibrant and intense flavors, the kind of bold notes you'd expect from freshly roasted beans. It's potent.
Potent. Gotcha. So that's the kickoff, the big flavor punch. What about the second brew, Tona?
Tona is where things mellow out. The harsher, more astringent notes have been leached out in the first brew, so you get a smoother, more rounded flavor. It's still robust, but more approachable. It's like the second act of a play, still engaging, but with a different mood.
A second act, I like that comparison. So it's less about getting a whole new batch of coffee and more about reinterpreting the original flavor. And then the third, Bereka?
Bereka is the mildest. It's almost like a gentle, warm beverage. The intense flavors are long gone, and you're left with a very subtle, comforting taste. It's the perfect way to end the ceremony. A gentle transition back to whatever comes next.
That's such an interesting progression. It's like a flavor journey all within one coffee session. The input talks about it being shared with neighbors, family, even strangers. How does this multi-brew approach facilitate that kind of shared experience?
Because it creates a flow. Everyone gets a cup of Abol, then the same jabena is refilled for Tona, and everyone gets that. Then again for Bereka. It means the host is continually serving, and guests are continually present. There's no finished cup. It's an ongoing process. It keeps people engaged and together.
It keeps people engaged. So it's not just about serving coffee. It's about maintaining this shared bubble of time. It makes sense why it takes over an hour. It's built into the very structure of the brewing. I was reading a bit about the jabena, the pot. It looks quite distinctive.
It is. It's usually made of clay, with a round base, a long, slender neck, and a small opening at the top. It often has a straw-like spout near the bottom where the coffee is poured from. The design is practical for pouring from a height, which helps create that slight froth.
Ah, so it's designed specifically for this ritual. That's neat. It's not just a generic pot. And the input mentions roasting the beans by hand right in front of you. How does seeing that direct, immediate roasting affect your perception of the coffee compared to just buying pre-ground beans?
It gives you an appreciation for the raw material and the effort involved. You see the beans change, you smell them evolve. It demystifies the process and connects you to the origin. When you see those green beans transform into dark, fragrant coffee, you understand the alchemy that's happening.
Alchemy. That's a great word for it. It's like you're witnessing the birth of the flavor. So if we were to take this lesson from the input, this idea of respecting the raw ingredients in the process and apply it to how we might think about food or even other beverages in our own lives, what would that look like?
It might look like taking a moment to appreciate where your food comes from or how it's prepared. Instead of just eating a prepackaged meal, Perhaps taking the time to cook something simple from scratch, or visiting a local market. It's about engaging with the sustenance you consume.
Engaging with our sustenance. I like that. It's about bringing that intentionality to our everyday lives. So let's tie this back to the input and the Ethiopian coffee ceremony specifically. We've talked about the multi-brew aspect and the visual roasting. What's the combined effect of these elements on the social aspect? The input mentions sharing with strangers.
The shared brewing and the length of the ceremony create a natural space for conversation. When you're all waiting for the second or third pour, there's time to talk. And the host, by offering this elaborate ritual, is extending an invitation to connect. It breaks down barriers. Offering coffee to a stranger in this context is a profound act of welcome and trust.
An act of welcome and trust. That's really powerful. It's like the coffee ceremony is the social glue. So thinking about the input again, this birthplace of coffee, Ethiopia, they've got this figured out. It's not about speed, it's about depth. Is there a term for this kind of deliberate, unhurried approach to a daily activity?
There are various terms. In some cultures, you might hear about haigi or fika, which are about coziness and taking a break with friends. But the Ethiopian ceremony has a unique depth because it's so intrinsically linked to the preparation of the beverage itself. It's not just taking a break, it's participating in the creation of the break.
Participating in the creation of the break. That's a fantastic way to describe it. It's active mindfulness. So, regarding this aspect of the coffee ceremony, what we've discussed boils down to it being a multi-layered experience, enhancing flavor through progressive brewing and fostering deep social connections through shared ritual. Let's take a moment to reflect before continuing. Welcome back, everyone. We're really digging into the richness of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, as described in our input. We've explored the multi-brew process and the communal aspect. Now, Lucas, let's consider the broader implications. The input poses the question, have you ever had coffee made from scratch, right in front of you? This suggests an experience that's quite rare for many of us.
It is, and that rarity is part of why it's so impactful when it does happen. For many people, coffee appears in a cup, already made. They might add milk or sugar, but the core preparation is hidden. Seeing it from raw bean to brew changes your relationship with that cup.
Changes your relationship. That's a strong phrase. How does that change manifest? Is it about respect or appreciation or something else?
It's all of those, I think. When you see the labor, the skill, the time that goes into roasting, grinding, and brewing, you develop a deeper appreciation for the beverage. You understand it's not just a commodity. It's a product of effort and tradition. It elevates it from a functional item to something artisanal.
Artisanal. That makes so much sense. The input describes the birthplace of coffee, Ethiopia, not rushing it. This directly contrasts with the modern drive for instant gratification and efficiency, especially with our morning coffee. What do you think is lost when we prioritize speed over this kind of deliberate preparation?
A lot, I think. We lose the opportunity for mindfulness. We miss out on the sensory richness, the smell of the roasting beans, the sound of the grinding, the warmth of the jabena. We miss the social connection that the input highlights, the sharing with family and neighbors. We reduce coffee to fuel rather than an experience.
Reduce it to fuel. Yeah, that feels very accurate for so many of us. The input mentions it's shared with neighbors, family, even strangers who happen to stop by. This openness is really striking. Does the ceremony itself encourage that inclusivity?
Absolutely. The process is inherently communal. When the host is roasting and brewing, they're doing it for everyone present. It's a gift of their time and effort. There's no rush to finish, so conversation can flow naturally. Someone stopping by isn't an interruption. They're a welcome addition to the gathering.
A welcome addition. It sounds like the ceremony creates its own little world, a pocket of calm and connection. So if we were to try and replicate even a sliver of this intentionality in our own lives, what's a small step someone could take, inspired by this input?
Well, for starters, perhaps try brewing coffee at home using a method that's a bit more involved than just pressing a button, maybe a pour-over, or even a French press. Pay attention to the aroma as it brews. Or, if you have friends over, try to make coffee together, rather than just one person making it for everyone.
Making coffee together. That's a great idea, turning it into a shared activity. The input says the birthplace of coffee doesn't rush it. What does that tell us about the cultural DNA of Ethiopia in relation to coffee?
It suggests a deep-seated respect for tradition and for the origins of things. Coffee is fundamental to their identity and hospitality. They've maintained this practice for centuries, prioritizing the human connection and the sensory experience over sheer speed. It's about savoring life's moments.
Savoring life's moments. That really resonates. So thinking about the input, this idea of coffee as a ceremony, not a quick fix, how does this contrast with, say, the idea of coffee as a performance enhancer for productivity? Is there a way for coffee to be both?
It's a challenge, isn't it? I think it's possible to appreciate the ritual and still use coffee for its stimulating effects. But it requires a conscious effort to segment. Maybe the morning ceremony is for connection and mindfulness, and then later, if you need a boost for work, you might have a simpler cup. But it's about acknowledging the different roles coffee can play.
Acknowledging the different roles. So it's not necessarily one or the other, but about being intentional about which role coffee is playing at any given moment. The input talks about sharing with strangers. That's particularly interesting in today's world, where sometimes we're more hesitant to engage with people we don't know.
It speaks volumes about the power of hospitality and shared ritual. The coffee ceremony is an invitation. It says, "You are welcome here, sit with me." It's a universal language of warmth and acceptance, transcending barriers of language or background. It's built on generosity.
Generosity. That's a perfect word to describe it. It's like the entire ceremony is an act of giving. So for this final topic, focusing on the input's description of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, the key takeaway is that it's a profound, multi-sensory ritual that prioritizes connection, tradition, and mindful engagement over speed and convenience. That wraps today's episode. Thanks for listening.